we do have a unique perspective because we have, they say ingenuity is the daughter of invention, right? I'm not ingenuity. How do they say it? Necessity. And we do need everything, you know. And so we end up creating solutions. There's a startup in Cameroon called Kiro Games, and they have a gaming platform. And so they build games. And I remember one time they created this amazing innovation because they wanted to get more revenue. And they figured that they could get more revenue from the parents of the kids playing their games. And so they're like, how can they get their parents to play the game, like interact with the games? And so they created kind of a control mechanism for the parents to control the playing time of the games so that the parents could then take the, like the courses that they were charging them. And so they were trying to solve a different problem. But because of it, they were then able to create technology that prevented, like says, okay, you know, a kid can play, so the parent can decide that a kid can play for 2 hours and then has to do some testing or, you know, and so that is because they were trying to solve a problem that wasn't necessarily what they intended. And so that's part of some of our ingenuity. We see so much talent. One of the things, one of my hats is I'm the current head judge for the Africa Prize for Engineering Innovation. And so we have applicants from around the continent, across the continent, and you just see so much creativity. Last year, our winner was a South African. And you know how difficult it is to get certain medications, right? Especially for chronic illnesses, and you have to go to clinics, you know, government, usually clinics, and then stand in line. And so they created like a kiosk, and you get an SMS code when your medication is ready. You get an SMS, a text message, and then you go and put the code in, and then your medication comes out. And so it like also the stigma associated with certain illnesses. And so I think that's something, again, it's unique. It was created for Africa, but it could work around the world. And what I always encourage our entrepreneurs to do is to not just build for local. It's great, but like when Facebook was created, they didn't say, oh, we just want to address our local, you know. We need to think big. And so not just addressing local, but seeing our technology being an export commodity.
When I built my first startup, it was very unique, whereas you're trying to build infrastructure, SaaS, which is software as a service, enterprise SaaS for large businesses such as banks, mobile operators, and large retail. In other parts of the world, you build something like that, you have a team that uses it, and they're on their way. You can charge $500,000 to $1 million to do so. But there's some very unique things on the continent, right? There's a difference between consumer software and business software. Consumer software, everyone in this room probably learned how to use TikTok, you know, Instagram, whatever the case may be, to actually run their business. If you sell enterprise software into a business, they'll call you and say, hey, could you print me that report that... I'm like, but you have the same credentials like I do, and it's a DIY. So I think there's a very interesting thing of building software and tech. It's the augmentation of human and the interface between human and tech. And I think it's encouraging because if you think about the continent as I build the second startup, where you look at SMEs, there's a huge population of unemployed, brilliant minds that you can use to augment that relationship between tech and human. And for us, what we're trying to do is call them like digital experts. How do you create this huge network of digital experts that could be augmented with the technology. Because I think there's a misconception that technology is going to solve it all, right? And also there's a misconception, whereas if you get on the internet, the magic's going to happen, not realizing that in big businesses you have teams understanding how marketing, sales, and customer success. So if you think about this augmentation of tech and human, which is very unique to the continent, I believe, right? You can actually solve larger problems when you think of economic stability, also knowledge transfer, and also builders and future builders. And I've heard a lot, Dorothy and also talk about these builders. You know, I think if we really want to solve large-scale problems on the continent, we have to think about building a nation of builders, right? And if we think of all the countries across Africa, if we have that mindset within education, because we are, everyone has a degree here, right? And you're going to think about your consulting job and everything else that you go out and adapt to. But I'm thinking of, if you think about builders and building future and building the future of Africa that you want, I think the mindset changes, right? And for us, I think there's a uniqueness of the 1.4 billion consumers we have on the continent.
Government tends to be very inefficient. We always talk about public-private partnership. I've added another P. In Ghana, we have also what I term the political service. So political, public-private. And one of the most inefficient parts is the political service, followed by the public service. Then we have the private service and that. Unfortunately, there's not that much dialogue between, especially the political service and private sector. There's the lip service of the private sector being an engine of growth and that. But even for top companies like ourselves, leading companies like ourselves, sometimes there isn't collaboration. There isn't also discussions and that between ourselves and government with regard to policy. It's changing a bit. I think government could do a bit more in engaging market leaders and before certain policies and that.
Can you please expand on what you mean by political service?
Political service is a bit controversial, but when I was growing up in Ghana, you had a public service that was that employed technocrats by merit. It has totally changed now. I see multi-billion-dollar state organizations run by political operatives. How can, in my company, right, I wouldn't employ some of these political operatives as assistant managers, right? Then you see these organizations, right? They are not political organizations. They are business organizations. I don't mind these political operators operating in the political sphere, like the ministries and that, because they are supported, even here in England, they are supported by the civil service. So you have civil servants supporting them. But you throw a political operator in an organization, a billion-dollar organization, to be a CEO, is not supported by anyone. The buck stops with him. He has to make the decisions. And that is why, and because Africa also has most of the commercial activities centered around government. So you can see that where activities are centered around an inefficient system, the system doesn't work. So that's what I mean by political service, which is probably one of the biggest services in the space.